Hello, Ojibwe people. I am so glad to be here, and I'm glad you've joined me. Thank you for coming, and I want you to listen carefully because I think I have some interesting subject to talk about. I've been asked to talk about a big, long word, and the word is called spirituality. Now, don't worry. We'll go into it, and we'll talk about what it means. Very simply, it has to do with how you choose to live your life. Now, I've chosen those words very carefully. How you choose to live your life. We're all in the same world. We all have the same problems. I could name problems, maybe 650 problems. We all have them, no matter who you are, whether you are a Muslim or a Hindu or a Pakistani or a Greek or a French person or an American or whatever background you are, Native American, whatever. We all have the same problems. And to me, how each one of us chooses to live our life is the most important thing we can do in the world. So I want to talk about it, and I want to tell you why I'm here. About 60 years ago, a family moved in next door to where we lived in Illinois, and it was the Goldberg family. And Mr. Goldberg became Reinald's business partner, and they had two daughters. One was Katie, and Katie Lechner, who is sitting right in front of me now, invited me to come because she and I, through 60 years of friendship, have been talking about how we could make this world a better place. That's another way to talk about spirituality. How to make this world a better place. No matter who you are, what's happened to you, no matter what your experiences are, we're all in it together. And Katie and I have emailed back and forth and written back and forth and seen each other through the years. And finally she thought, well, why not to have Betty Warrenwrath, and that's my name, come and talk about her spirituality and what she thinks about how connected other religions can be to the Ojibwe spirituality, religion, and traditions. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I have looked at all the documentaries that Katie has made with her crew, and I have learned a lot about the Ojibwe traditions. I respect them. I think the reverence for Mother Earth, sacred Earth, is something that I've always had in my thinking, in my concern, but never before have I become passionate about it. And by working on this subject with you, I've become more passionate. So I want to go through what made me what I am today. My name is Betty Warrenwrath. My ancestors came to this country in the 17th and 18th centuries. They were Scottish, Dutch, and French. And they came, guess why they came? They came for religious freedom. They were oppressed by various governments where they were, and they came here for religious freedom. And that's how the United States began to have its idea that we all need freedom to live the way we choose to live. That is, what is good for all. It's for the common good. So I have that background, and they came then. I was born in Pennsylvania in the East because my father was in the First World War. And I remember him coming back from war in his uniform and not knowing anything, but there was my daddy back again. And then we moved to New York State, where I spent the first 26 years of my life. I think as I look back and reflect on my age and my years of living, and it's been a long time, I am 100 years old, and that's a long time. I think I've learned a lot, but I've had people and reading and experiences that have changed me from year to year to year, and even at 100, I am still learning and changing my thinking and hoping I can do something in this world. And I hope maybe I can help you understand more how important it is to choose how you're going to live your life with others in relationship, okay? I would say my first influence was my wonderful parents. I had unusual bringing up. My father was a minister, like a medicine man. He solved problems for people. People came to our homes who had marital problems, money problems, neighbor problems, alcoholic problems, you name it. I can remember one wonderful experience my father had. He had got a call from a woman in the church who said, "My husband's gone out again. He'll get lost. Can you help me?" So my father got in his car and went over through the streets of the town until he could find this woman, this man. The man had dementia, and so he would leave his home. But his life was teaching the teachings of Jesus, but also he lived that life of helping others in need. In those days, there were not psychiatrists or psychologists or therapists to help people. So they all came to his study in our home, and as a young girl, I learned about problems in the world. I didn't know much about politics, which I know now, but in those days, I did know about what was going on, and we were to hold it in confidence, of course. He was a wonderful man. He had a sense of humor. He could talk about serious things. He could talk about light things. He would play with us. But the thing that I remember the most, and his biggest influence on me, is this, and listen carefully. I was talking with some people one day, and they said to me, "You don't believe in the incarnation? You don't believe in the physical resurrection of Jesus? You don't believe this?" That's what you call doctrine, traditional doctrine. And in the Christian church, a lot of people have different ways of looking at things. Catholics and Protestants are very different. My father was a Protestant Presbyterian minister, and he was one who took Jesus' teachings to heart. Jesus' teachings were taught at a time when there was tremendous oppression of the Roman Empire on all the people that lived in that Palestine, in that area, in the Mideast. And he said some things that are very difficult for us, and they have to do with spirituality. I don't want you to forget, we're talking about how to live in this world. One of Jesus' teachings, which people have a hard time, is the idea of forgiveness. When somebody does something to wrong you, your obligation is to forgive. If you don't forgive, you never develop a relationship. Another teaching of Jesus was, are you ready? Love your enemies. Now, what does that mean? Loving your enemies means you and another person or another group may have different ideas, different ways of handling problems in the world, different ways of rituals for your religions. Everyone is different. But you have to respect other people's way of thinking. You have to know what your own is and live it. So when I went to my father and said, "Do I have to believe all this doctrine?" And my father said, "Bet, don't worry about it." He said, "It isn't what you believe, it's how you live that's important." So you can see this is the first big influence on my life, was I didn't worry about, I read our holy writings, which are the Old Testament and the New Testament, but my father said, you don't have to take it literally. Look at the truth behind what's written in the scriptures. So I never, when he read a story from the Hebrew scriptures about, the famous one of David with a slingshot killing a big man named Goliath, maybe that happened, maybe it didn't. It was illustrating a point, and you were supposed to read that, my father said, and get the idea. When people oppress people, learn from what happens to people when they're oppressed, when they're discriminated against. So my father was a tremendous influence on me. My mother was involved. She had 4 children, and she was still involved in the community. And I remember one of her activities was, are you ready? A committee that took care of young women who had had babies out of wedlock. And this was way back in the 20s, 80 years ago. She was interested in that. So I learned that you weren't living your own life yourself. Your concern was first you have to take care of your food and your clothing and housing for yourself and your family, but then there are others who have needs that are greater than yours, and you go out and you help them. A story just to lighten up a little. I had a sister, and my sister and I were complaining one day because every time we had a holiday, like Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter, my mother and father would invite lonely old people to come and have dinner with us. And my sister and I went to them once and said, can't we have just one meal just with our family? Well, we learned later that this was one of the most wonderful things they ever did, that they looked at people in the community and who was lonely, who had lost a husband or somebody, who was sick, have them for dinner and cheer them up. So I learned, I had a wonderful bringing up. So the influence of my parents was terrific. Now I've lived in New York State for 26 years, and I went to college there, and there I met the love of my life. His name is Reinhold, and I think I just, shall we say, lucked out. He and I have been married for 77 years. We have 3 children. They have children. We have 2 great-grandchildren and 2 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, a pair of twins. But when I think of my relationship with Reinhold, my husband for 77 years, we are completely different in many ways. He's conservative, and I'm more liberal. He's creative. I'm uncreative, except maybe in the kitchen. He has a sense of what we call equanimity, a balance, something that always, if something is coming up like an important thing that you have to do, like talk to you in a talk, he'll be quiet and calm. And what he has done for me in my life is to be my balance wheel and say, calm down. Just relax. Keep cool. Keep cool. But he's done more than that. We're different in our personalities and our temperaments, but we have the same values. And I think we have to learn that not only in a marital relationship, but brother-sister relationship, parent-child relationship, and your relationship with your community and the larger community. You may have different traditions. The Ojibwe tribe has some beautiful ritual traditions and ceremonies. Their respect for sacred earth, Mother Earth, I think is something that can be emulated and is the best in any religion or spirituality in the world. It's something that you can take pride in. But I think we have to also realize that our traditions are sometimes not understood by other traditions. And we have to try to form a dialogue with that other side. It's not easy to do, because when you're growing up and when you're the age in high school or college or younger, and sometimes older people, they think They have the answer. They just definitely have the answer. I'm 100 years old, and I know I don't have the answers. I am still learning and working my way through. And that's one thing I want to pass on to you. I think your experiences in life, if you think about, am I making this world a better place? Or am I thinking of myself? If you think of all the problems in the world that are going on now, this morning I read the newspaper, or I looked at the newspaper, and it said 30,000 children are going back. The United States is sending them back to where they were sent. They're trying to come into this country to have a wonderful life. And the problems of immigration are huge, and they affect everyone, whether or not you're a Jew, an Ojibwe, a Christian, a Muslim, a Hispanic, a Mexican. Those immigrations problems affect everybody who lives on this continent, in the world. What's happening in the Middle East affects us. What's happening in Israel and Palestine, the killings back and forth. What's happening in Iraq. Everything that's happening in the world affects everybody. No one is an island. I don't know, somebody said that once. A famous poet, I think, said, no man is an island. We are not an island. We are part of the whole universe. So I think this is a big subject. It's a subject that we all have, no matter what your age. And before I want to be sure to tell you that since I think I'm talking to people in the next generations, I'm sure I am, because I'm pretty old. It's on your shoulders. The responsibility is on your shoulders. Take pride in what you have. Do what you can. Now let's go back to more influences, all right? I also had some wonderful teachers. I belonged at one time to a marvelous organization called, are you ready? Common Ground. It was started near Chicago by a rabbi and a priest and somebody who specialized in Near Eastern spirituality and religions. They thought that the most important thing was to educate people, adults, people who sometimes adults have their minds made up about things, to try to help them learn what other spiritual traditions and religions have. And I tell you, for the last 30 years I've been involved in this. And that brings up a big word, understanding how other people think. Did you know that Did you know that Jesus was a Jew? Did you know that the Buddhists were thinking of the problems in the world had to do with ignorance? Did you know that the Muslim religion is very complex, but it has the same basic premise and grounding. Take care of the needy, take care of the widows, take care of the hungry, and understand each other. Every religion has that within it. The Quakers have it. The Ojibways have it in their own way. We all have it, but we have to practice it. We can't think that we have the only way, and that's what I learned from this interfaith organization. It opened my mind. So you really have to learn about other people. Now, when I married, so my teacher in this wonderful interfaith organization had as his basis a grounding in what we call dialogue. You're listening to me, and I'm hoping you're learning something from me. I listen to you, and I hope I'm learning from you. And I've learned a lot about the Ojibwe people, about what's happened to them, their discrimination, their broken treaties. I sympathize and empathize with that. But I don't think we can sit and just feel sorry for ourselves. I think we have to do something about it. Going back to what is spirituality, you choose how you're going to live your life. Are you going to sit and still be discriminated against, or are you going to act and do something? And I think how you act is just absolutely vital. Just absolutely vital. Okay, I think it's time we talk about what experiences in life have how they have an effect on you and how you choose to live your life. When I married Reinhold, I had no idea that I would ever get to Europe and travel. But when he was making films with Katie's father, he decided he would like to go to visit countries and find out how other people live in other parts of the world. And we went to 13 countries, and in each country we found a family and found how differently they lived and how differently they thought and how different their government was. And it was a broadening experience. So I think what I would say is that opening up of the world of different ideas and trying to understand other people was a very broadening effect on me. And I recommend it to anybody. If you can get out of your own little island and move out and learn about others, is a good idea. But then I think also of how, if you are involved in a movement, and we're going to talk about the Ojibwe people and their dealings with the mining companies who are polluting your lands. But I want to talk about the same kind of a serious problem that came up when we were living in Highland Park, and we already had 3 children. And that's the civil rights movement. My husband was the head of what is called the Human Relations Commission of Highland Park, and that commission's job was to make it possible for black people to move into Highland Park. Now that was in the 60s. And you remember, you read about Martin Luther King. The black people were oppressed and discriminated against in the South terrifically. And it finally ended up so that our government in the United States passed a law where discrimination was not legal and not right. But the involvement in that made us realize that there was a difference in people's feelings. And how do you get across that barrier of thinking differently? If you've been discriminated against, it has to be a much different feeling than the people who have never been discriminated against. If they don't know they're discriminating, somehow they've got to learn that they're discriminating against people. You have to establish a dialogue and listen to each other. So I think our involvement in that was incredibly important in both our maturing as citizens of this country, as citizens of the world, and as people. I think personally I had the most interesting experience in learning about why people don't have enough to eat, don't have enough to where to live, and not to be clothed. I spent some time after our children got to be educated in the city of Chicago. And for about 15 or 20 years I worked with a neighborhood house, serving Meals on Wheels, visiting people, and understanding why they didn't have money and why they needed jobs. And I can't tell you what an effect that had to me. So if you're involved in something like that, it helps you. It's a part of your education to learn how other people live and how other people think. So now we've got problems in the world. I'm taking it for granted that most of people that I'm talking with now are in the younger generations where you have a life to lead. How are you going to act if you're a member of the Ojibwe people and you've been discriminated against, you want to act. And there's certain ways that what you have to do for yourself before you can act. And I prepared a chart. And I think it'll be a guideline to help you choose how you're going to live your life. We're talking about spirituality and your lives and how you're going to affect the world to be a better place. So I'm going to ask Katie Lettner if she will read the first sentence. I have got the word spirituality, and for every letter in that word, I have a main idea that I want you to take home. What does it say first, Katie?
It says, you and spirituality. S. Spirituality is the way you choose to live life.
Well, I think we've done that enough. So I'm going to, I think you've got the point. I've said it about 8 times, I think. So the first word is spirituality is the way you choose to run your life. What is P?
P. Prepare your mind before you act.
Okay. I think your education is absolutely vital. If you don't learn about other people, learn about history and how people have made mistakes, how are you going to keep from making mistakes? I think the improvement of your schools is absolutely essential. It's not only essential on the reservations, it's essential in the United States. When people are illiterate and can't think, and that's what education is, to make you think seriously about things, that is vital. So prepare yourself by being educated yourself and seeing that others are educated who need it. I.
Be influenced by your family and religious traditions.
Okay. Each one of us, most of us, not all of us, because today the world is turning more secular, but most of us have traditions. Katie has a Jewish background, I have a Protestant Christian background, and you who are listening to me have the Ojibwe spirituality and traditions and religion that you have grown up with. And from my experience of 100 years, I want to pass on something. We all have our traditions, and they are good. But times change. Not that the basic values of your traditions change. Honesty, love, compassion, social justice, peace, harmony. Those don't change. But how you get to that point does change. We have in this world now technology that is incredible. It ties us all together. The globalization, the understanding, the communication with the social media. You're living in a world where if you're not hep on what's going on in that kind of a world, you're not going to be able to be effective as an Ojibwe person to try to help your people and help the rest of the country and the world. I think that's enough on that one.
Dave Anderson, who owns these chain of famous Dave's restaurants, is a LCO Indian, and he said that the computer is the next buffalo.
Yeah, that's very good. The computer is the next buffalo. It's something that has to be mastered or controlled. Okay, control is better.
R. Develop relationships as the basis for change.
Okay, I think we've talked about relationships, whether it's between you and your husband, you and your parents, you and your children, you and your teacher, you and your enemy, you and who live in the reservation and you who don't live in the reservation. That relationship has to be very carefully nurtured. Okay.
I. Improve your tolerance of hurt and discrimination.
We've talked about that. The Ojibwe tribe or people have had much discrimination launched against them. As we've said, broken treaties. But I think that I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. If that happens to me, I just can't sit and wallow in being sorry for myself. I think I have to prepare myself, educate myself, have the desire to go out and do something about that. You can't just be hurt. A simple example is my husband and I have had the rule that we never go to bed with a grudge on our shoulders. And it works. Don't ever go to bed with a grudge. A grudge doesn't help anything. It doesn't move anything forward. You have to be positive. I think if the Ojibwe people would take pride in their incredible, unique reverence for Mother Earth and how important it is to everybody on Earth, not just on the reservation, but everybody. You know that people all over the world are looking for energy source. All over the world there is fracking. All over the world there is mining. There are mining companies who are trying to make money, there's nothing wrong in making money as long as you don't gouge somebody else. They're trying to get energy, but when they pollute the land, it destroys the ground that we live on is destroyed, and the source of our life is hurt. So it isn't just on the reservation, it's all over the world this is going on. Mining companies. So what I'm eager for you is to take hold and do something, but do it carefully. Okay.
Think carefully before you act.
That's just what I've said. Think carefully. Don't just go out and protest and don't feel sorry for yourself, but think carefully and make a plan and work with other people. That's what relationships do. If you're trying to do something about the mining company, you have to work with the local tribal council. You have to work with the government representatives in your own state. You have to work with non-governmental agencies like churches and mosques and synagogues. Everybody has to work together to realize there is pollution all over. There is desecration of the land all over all of the whole world. It isn't just Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois. It's all over. We all have to be involved. And that's one. Okay, go ahead.
You try to understand why people act and talk the way they do.
Okay, I think we've covered that. Listening and learning is the next one. Listening and learning and understanding other people is vital. You can go to the I now.
Have a good attitude.
Your attitude is vital. When
inspire the next generation by your example.
That's what you want to do. That's what my parents did for me. That's what we try to do for our children. And each one of them is doing something in the world which is good. I think you have to not only take pride in what your people are doing, but you have to take pride in what you are doing. So that's that.
Remember, Jake said to me, my son said to me, you know, Mom said, you're a doer.
What's left?
T. Working together. People of good faith can make change.
I think we've covered this in relationships. Working together. You can't do it alone. You have to work it together. Okay.
Why? You can help to make this a better world for all. It takes patience and the help of the Creator Spirit.
I'm talking about all of us. Choosing to live a life with the help of the Creator Spirit, God, the ground of your being, whatever you have, there's something beyond you that's bigger than you are. You need that with you in order to carry on. You can't do it alone. And I think my message to you is, how you live your life is the most important thing that can ever happen and will change the world. Now I'd like to end by saying that I want to thank you for what the Ojibwe people have taught me. I have become passionate now about the earth. Before I was lukewarm. I knew there was pollution, but now, just getting ready to talk to you, I realized how very vital it is. And I want to thank you for, I've learned. I'm 100 years old and I'm still learning. And I want you to know that you've got a lot to learn and a lot of experiences. And I just hope and pray that we meet again. And I hope you've taken notes. And I would love to hear from you if you have any ideas or questions or disagreements. I'll listen. I learn from you, and you learn from me. Thanks for listening for all this time, and may peace and harmony be our life in this world forever. Thanks.